Throughout the history of the United States, four presidents have tragically been assassinated in less than a century, starting with Abraham Lincoln in 1865. Additionally, there have been attempts on the lives of two other sitting presidents, one president-elect and one former president. Numerous other presidents have been the targets of plots that, fortunately, never came to fruition. Astonishingly, this means attempts have been made on the lives of 1 in every 5 American presidents, with 1 in every 9 meeting their end through assassination. These stark numbers highlight the persistent and grave dangers faced by those holding the nation's highest office. Many assassination plots were hidden from the public because of presidential secrecy and fear that publicity would inspire others. This video reveals all plots, failed, and successful assassination attempts on American presidents. It was long believed that James Buchanan, like all presidents, faced threats but escaped his one-term presidency without any assassination attempts. However, compelling evidence suggests otherwise. During a reunion of Civil War veterans in 1887, one veteran disclosed a plot to kill Buchanan. He revealed that Kansas abolitionists, hoping that Buchanan's death would lead to Kansas falling under their control, hired an assassin to murder the president. The assassin arrived in the Capitol with plans to shoot Buchanan as he walked through the White House grounds. Fortunately, the plot was thwarted by an informant, leading to the assassin's arrest. On January 30th, 1835, Andrew Jackson, the 7th President of the United States, was attending the funeral of Congressman Warren R. Davis from South Carolina at the U.S. Capitol. As Jackson was leaving, he was confronted by Richard Lawrence, an unemployed house painter with a history of mental instability. Lawrence aimed a pistol at Jackson and pulled the trigger, but the weapon misfired. Undeterred, Lawrence produced a second pistol and fired again, but it too misfired. Witnesses described the sound of the misfires as small explosions, yet neither shot hit Jackson. Known for his fierce temper and resilience, Jackson immediately lunged at Lawrence, using his cane as a weapon. Several bystanders, including Congressman and American folk hero Davy Crockett, quickly intervened and subdued Lawrence. Jackson emerged unscathed. During Lawrence's trial, it became evident that he was mentally unbalanced. He believed Jackson was obstructing his claim to the British throne, and that the U.S. government owed him a large sum of money. Lawrence was found not guilty by reason of insanity and spent the remainder of his life in various institutions. This incident marked the first assassination attempt on a sitting U.S. president. In the summer of 1864, during the height of the Civil War, President Abraham Lincoln was seeking re-election amidst considerable opposition and threats from Confederate sympathizers and other critics of his leadership and the ongoing conflict. On August 23, 1864, Lincoln was traveling from Washington, D.C. to the Soldiers' Home, a retreat about 3 miles from the White House, where he frequently stayed during the summer to escape the Capitol's heat and pressures. The route to and from the Soldiers' Home was considered perilous due to its isolated and wooded nature. During one such trip, while Lincoln was in his carriage, a shot was fired at him. The bullet pierced his hat but miraculously left him unharmed. Reports indicate that Lincoln remained calm and unconcerned about the incident, allegedly remarking that it was not his time to die. The incident was investigated, but the shooter was never identified, with suspicions pointing towards Confederate sympathizers or other adversaries of Lincoln. This attempted assassination underscored the high level of danger Lincoln faced during his presidency. On the evening of April 14, 1865, President Abraham Lincoln attended a performance of Our American Cousin at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. He was in high spirits as the Civil War had concluded a few days earlier with Confederate General Robert E. Lee's surrender. John Wilkes Booth, a well-known actor and Confederate supporter, had been conspiring against Lincoln for some time. Originally planning to kidnap Lincoln, Booth decided to assassinate him following the war's end. Booth and his co-conspirators aimed to kill several high-ranking government officials to destabilize the Union government, with Booth taking on the task of killing Lincoln. During the play, Booth sneaked into Lincoln's private box and shot him in the back of the head with a .44 caliber Derringer pistol. After firing the fatal shot, Booth leaped onto the stage, injuring his leg in the process, and fled, shouting, "Sic semper tyrannis," thus always to tyrants, in Latin. Lincoln was carried across the street to the Peterson house, where doctors attended to him throughout the night. But his wound proved fatal. He died at 7:22 a.m. on April 15, 1865. Booth escaped Washington, D.C., but was tracked down by Union soldiers. After 12 days, he was found hiding in a barn in Virginia. The barn was set ablaze to flush him out, and he was shot and killed by Sergeant Boston Corbett. Lincoln's assassination was the first successful assassination of a U.S. president and had profound implications for the nation. Ulysses S. Grant, America's 18th president, recounted a deliberate attempt on President Andrew Johnson's life during a visit to Indianapolis. Johnson, along with Grant and other members of their party, was staying at a hotel in the city. While they were gathered in one of the hotel rooms, a shot was fired from a second-story window across the street. The bullet struck a Chinese lantern near Johnson and passed within 3 feet of Grant's head. Despite the severity of the incident, local authorities made no arrests. A would-be assassin targeted President-elect Rutherford B. Hayes, planning to kill him during the March 1877 inauguration at the Capitol. Washington Police Chief Major A.C. Richards led the investigation, which culminated in the assassin's arrest at the Imperial Hotel. The arrest was made with the unofficial assistance of 2 nearby U.S. Secret Service agents. During questioning, the suspect confessed to his plans to assassinate Hayes. James Abram Garfield, the 20th President of the United States, was shot on July 2, 1881 by Charles Julius Guiteau. In 1875, Guiteau's family deemed him insane and tried to have him committed, but he managed to escape. Guiteau falsely thought he had significantly contributed to Garfield's election win and deserved a consulship as a reward. However, the Garfield administration repeatedly turned down his applications to serve in Vienna or Paris, which left him frustrated and offended. Guiteau had been stalking the president for weeks. On the morning of July the 2nd, Garfield was at the Baltimore and Potomac Railroad Station in Washington, D.C., on his way to his alma mater, Williams College, where he was scheduled to deliver a speech before beginning his vacation. As he walked through the station with his sons, Secretary of State James Gillespie Blaine and Secretary of War Robert Todd Lincoln, Guiteau approached from behind and fired 2 shots. One bullet struck Garfield's shoulder, while the other struck him in the back, passing the first lumbar vertebra but missing the spinal cord before coming to rest behind his pancreas. After shooting Garfield, Guiteau tried to escape via a waiting cab, but collided with policeman Patrick Kearney, who apprehended him. Kearney, excited by the arrest, forgot to confiscate Guiteau's gun until they reached the police station. Garfield was taken to the White House, where doctors made numerous errors in treating him. Medical practices at the time did not believe in antisepsis or the need for cleanliness to prevent infection. Garfield's condition worsened over the summer as he endured excruciating pain and fluctuating high fevers. Despite various attempts to improve his health, including moving him to the seaside in New Jersey, Navy engineers rigging up an air cooler to relieve him from the heat of Washington's summer, and Alexander Graham Bell, who devised a metal detector specifically to find the bullet lodged in him, he did not recover. After 79 days of suffering, Garfield succumbed to his injuries and the resulting infections on September 19, 1881. Guiteau was tried for murder, and despite his insanity plea, he was found guilty and executed by hanging on June 30, 1882. Garfield's death led to significant reforms in medical treatment and spurred the civil service reform movement, leading to the Pendleton Civil Service Reform Act. President Chester A. Arthur survived 2 assassination attempts. The first occurred at the Butler Mansion, where a shot was mistakenly fired at a reporter who was thought to be Arthur, as confirmed by Senator John P. Jones. The second attempt happened on October 31, 1881, when an armed assailant entered the White House. After a struggle with the doorkeepers, the attacker was subdued and arrested. In 1890, an assassination attempt on President Benjamin Harrison was thwarted by the quick actions of U.S. Secret Service agents. Harrison, who received numerous death threats during his presidency, was targeted by an assailant on May 23rd. The would-be assassin positioned himself on Pennsylvania Avenue, approximately 20 feet from where Harrison's coach would pass. As President Harrison's coach approached, the assassin attempted to draw his revolver. However, Secret Service agents, who were conducting an unofficial investigation into the threats against Harrison, swiftly subdued the attacker before he could carry out his plan. During interrogation, the assailant confessed to his intent to assassinate the president. The incident was kept largely under wraps by White House aides and political associates who did not inform President Harrison and denied the occurrence to the press. This episode underscores the persistent threats faced by U.S. presidents and the critical role of security measures in protecting the nation's leader. On September 6, 1901, William McKinley, the 25th President of the United States, was attending the Pan American Exposition in Buffalo, New York, 6 months into his second term. While at the Temple of Music, McKinley was greeting the public during a reception when Leon Czolgosz, a Polish-American and anarchist who believed the government was oppressive, approached McKinley with a concealed .32 caliber Iver Johnson revolver. Pretending to be in line to shake hands with the president, Czolgosz fired 2 shots at close range. One bullet grazed McKinley, while the other penetrated his abdomen. McKinley enjoyed meeting the public and often resisted the security measures available to him. His secretary, George B. Cortelyou, twice removed a visit to the Temple of Music from the schedule due to fears of an assassination attempt, but McKinley reinstated it both times. Czolgosz lost his job during the economic panic of 1893 and adopted anarchism, the political philosophy of recent assassins of foreign leaders. He viewed McKinley as a symbol of oppression and believed it was his anarchist duty to kill him. McKinley initially appeared to be recovering after being taken to the hospital. Surgeons operated on him, but could not locate the second bullet. Despite early signs of improvement, McKinley's condition deteriorated due to gangrene and infection setting in around the wounds. On September 14, 1901, 8 days after being shot, McKinley died from his injuries, and Vice President Theodore Roosevelt was sworn in as the 26th President of the United States. Leon Czolgosz was quickly apprehended at the scene. He confessed to the assassination without showing any remorse. Czolgosz was tried, convicted of murder, and executed in the electric chair on October 29, 1901. His last words were, "I killed the president because he was the enemy of the good people, the good working people. I am not sorry for my crime. I am sorry I could not see my father." McKinley's assassination highlighted the threats posed by anarchist movements and led to increased security measures for protecting the president. On the evening of October 14, 1912, former President Theodore Roosevelt was in Milwaukee campaigning for a third term under the Progressive Party, also known as the Bull Moose Party. As he was walking to his car, a crowd gathered around him, and he came face to face with John Schrank, who was armed with a .38 caliber revolver. The bullet struck Roosevelt in the right side of his chest, but he was saved by a thick 50-page speech manuscript folded in half titled "Progressive Cause Greater Than Any Individual," and a metal glasses case. Despite being shot, Roosevelt asked for mercy for his attacker as he might have been lynched, restoring order before the police arrived. As an experienced hunter and anatomist, Roosevelt correctly concluded that since he was not coughing blood, the bullet had not reached his lung. He declined suggestions to go to the hospital immediately. Roosevelt then insisted on giving his planned speech at the Milwaukee Auditorium. After delivering the 1-hour speech, he was rushed to a local hospital and then to Chicago, where doctors decided not to remove the bullet. Roosevelt lived with the bullet inside him for the rest of his life. Schrank, who claimed to have dreams in which President William McKinley accused Roosevelt of his death, had been stalking Roosevelt across 8 states. Diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, Schrank was committed to an institution for the criminally insane, where he died in 1943. This incident demonstrated Roosevelt's legendary toughness and commitment to his campaign. While John Schrank's shooting of President Theodore Roosevelt is often considered the most serious assassination attempt on his life, there were at least 2 other significant incidents during his presidency. In September 1903, Roosevelt narrowly escaped assassination when Henry Weilbrenner aimed a loaded gun at him, an event documented in several journals and books. Just a month later, another armed man, Peter Elliott, breached White House security with a loaded pistol. Elliott was subdued by doormen, and it was discovered that his bullets were coated with poison, suggesting a deliberate intent to kill the president. These incidents highlight the persistent dangers Roosevelt faced and the critical role of his security detail. On February 15, 1933, 17 days before his inauguration, an assassination attempt was made on President-elect Franklin Delano Roosevelt in Miami, Florida. Roosevelt was giving a speech from the back of a car when Giuseppe Zangara, an Italian immigrant and naturalized United States citizen who worked as a bricklayer, fired several shots at him. Although Zangara missed Roosevelt, he wounded 4 others, including Chicago Mayor Anton Cermak, who later died from his injuries. Zangara was swiftly apprehended and later executed in the electric chair. This attempt highlighted the dangers faced by incoming presidents even before taking office. On November 1st, 1950, an assassination attempt was made on President Harry Truman at the Blair House in Washington, D.C., where he was staying during White House renovations. Two Puerto Rican nationalists, Oscar Collazo and Griselio Torresola, launched the attack to draw attention to their independence cause. Torresola mortally wounded White House police officer Leslie Koffel. His bullet went through Torresola's head and blew out a portion of his brain, killing him instantly. Koffel would die of his 3 bullet wounds several hours later. Collazo was shot in the leg and captured. The attempt was thwarted and Truman was unharmed. Oscar Collazo survived his wounds despite being shot multiple times by the officers, was convicted at trial of murder and sentenced to death. President Truman commuted his sentence to life. After serving 27 years in Leavenworth Federal Prison in Kansas, Collazo had his sentence commuted to time served by President Jimmy Carter. Collazo was released in 1979 and soon returned to Puerto Rico, where he continued to support the independence movement. He died in 1994 at age 80. Collazo is quoted as saying, "It would not be justice to Griselio if we merely remembered him for his ability with weapons. We must remember the brave and expert guerrilla of the mountains of Jayuya as the patriot who never had doubts when his country called him to completion of his duty." On November 22, 1963, the 35th president of the United States, John F. Kennedy, was assassinated in Dallas, Texas, while on a political trip to mend frictions within the Democratic Party ahead of the 1964 presidential campaign. Riding in a motorcade through Dealey Plaza with his wife Jacqueline, Texas Governor John Connally, and Connally's wife Nellie, Kennedy was struck by 2 bullets fired from the Texas Schoolbook Depository. One bullet hit his back and another struck his head. Governor Connally was also injured. Kennedy was rushed to Parkland Memorial Hospital, where he was pronounced dead about 30 minutes after the shooting at 1 p.m. The nation was plunged into shock and mourning. Lee Harvey Oswald, a former Marine and defector to the Soviet Union, returned home to retrieve a pistol and shortly after killed Dallas policeman J.D. Tippit. Approximately 70 minutes after the shootings of Kennedy and Connally, Oswald was arrested by the Dallas Police Department and charged with both murders under Texas state law. On November 24, 1963, as live television cameras broadcast his transfer through the basement of Dallas Police Headquarters, Oswald was fatally shot by nightclub owner Jack Ruby. Oswald was taken to Parkland Memorial Hospital, where he died shortly thereafter. Ruby was convicted of Oswald's murder, but his conviction was overturned on appeal. Ruby died in prison in 1967 while awaiting a new trial. After a 10-month investigation, the Warren Commission established by President Lyndon Johnson to investigate the assassination concluded in 1964 that Oswald acted alone. Despite this, numerous conspiracy theories have persisted, involving various groups such as the Mafia, the CIA, the FBI, anti-Castro Cubans, and even elements within the U.S. government. Kennedy's assassination had a profound impact on American politics and culture, leading to significant changes in security procedures for protecting the president. In 1974, an assassination attempt was made on President Richard Nixon by Samuel Bike, a troubled and disillusioned individual. Bike, who had a history of mental health issues and had become increasingly angry at the government and society, devised a plan to hijack a commercial airliner and crash it into the White House, aiming to kill President Nixon. On February 22, 1974, Bike arrived at Baltimore Washington International Airport armed with a .22 caliber revolver and a gasoline bomb hidden in a briefcase. His plan was to force the pilots to fly the plane directly into the White House. Bike stormed onto Delta Airlines Flight 523, which was scheduled to fly to Atlanta, Georgia. He shot and killed an airport security guard, George Neil Ramsberg, as he attempted to enter the plane. Once on board, Bike demanded that the plane take off immediately. However, the pilots, Captain Melvin Brenner and First Officer Fred Jones, tried to explain that they could not take off without removing the wheel blocks and that the engines were not yet started. Frustrated and in a panic, Bike shot both pilots, fatally wounding Officer Jones. Despite being shot, Captain Brenner managed to delay Bike by pretending to follow his instructions while surreptitiously signaling for help. By this time, airport police had surrounded the plane. A standoff ensued, during which Bike threw his homemade gasoline bomb out of the cockpit window in an attempt to blow up the plane. The bomb failed to detonate properly. The police then stormed the aircraft, and in the ensuing confrontation, Bick was shot multiple times. Severely wounded, he took his own life with the revolver before he could be apprehended. Samuel Bick's assassination attempt on Richard Nixon was a chilling reminder of the vulnerabilities faced by national leaders and highlighted the potential dangers posed by individuals with grievances against the government. The incident led to increased security measures at airports and for high-profile public figures, reinforcing the need for vigilance in protecting the nation's leaders. President Gerald Ford faced 2 assassination attempts in 1975. The first occurred on September 5th in Sacramento, California, as he exited the California state capitol. Lynette "Squeaky" Fromm, a follower of Charles Manson, aimed a Colt .45 caliber pistol at him, but quick action by the Secret Service led to her immediate arrest. Fromm's attempt was motivated by environmental concerns and Manson's apocalyptic beliefs. The second attempt happened just weeks later, on September 22nd, in San Francisco. Sarah Jane Moore tried to shoot Ford with a .38 caliber revolver as he left a speaking engagement. Once again, Ford escaped unharmed, and Moore was quickly detained. Moore, a political radical, had been under FBI surveillance, but had managed to purchase a gun. These attempts highlighted the volatile political climate of the 1970s and the increased risks faced by public figures. On March 30, 1981, President Ronald Reagan was shot while leaving the Hilton Hotel in Washington, D.C. Secret Service agents quickly pushed the president into his limousine, but one bullet from John Hinckley Jr.'s .22 caliber revolver hit Reagan under his left armpit. Reagan's wound was only discovered after he began coughing up blood, with the bullet lodged just an inch from his heart. The president's condition was critical, and he spent 12 days in George Washington University Hospital. Hinckley, who had developed a paranoid infatuation with actress Jodie Foster after watching the film Taxi Driver, believed that assassinating a president would capture her attention. Hinckley had initially targeted President Jimmy Carter, but switched his focus to Reagan after Carter's term ended. After firing 6 shots, Hinckley was subdued and later found not guilty by reason of insanity. He remained in institutional psychiatric care until 2016. Reagan's survival and quick recovery became a symbol of his resilience and increased his popularity. On October 29, 1994, President Bill Clinton faced an assassination attempt when Francisco Martin Duran fired multiple shots at the White House from a nearby street. Clinton was inside at the time. Duran was quickly overpowered and later sentenced to 40 years in prison for the attack. Duran's motivations were rooted in anti-government sentiments and a desire to make a statement. During a visit to Tbilisi, Georgia, on May 10, 2005, President George W. Bush was targeted in an assassination attempt. Vladimir Arutunian attempted to throw a grenade at Bush while he was delivering a speech, but it failed to detonate. Arutunian was apprehended shortly afterward, and Bush was uninjured. This incident highlighted ongoing security concerns for U.S. presidents during international visits. In November 2011, 21-year-old Oscar Ramiro Ortega Hernandez attempted to assassinate President Barack Obama by firing shots at the White House from a nearby location, believing he was targeting the president. Ortega's actions raised significant security concerns. He was captured shortly after the incident and sentenced to prison. Ortega's motivations were reportedly influenced by conspiracy theories and anti-government sentiments. On June 16, 2016, an attempt was made on the life of then-presidential candidate Donald Trump at a rally in Las Vegas, Nevada. Michael Stephen Sanford, a British national, tried to seize a police officer's gun to shoot Trump. Sanford approached the officer under the guise of seeking an autograph, but was quickly subdued by law enforcement officers on the scene. Trump continued with his rally without incident. Sanford later admitted to the plot, stating that he had been planning the assassination for about a year and had traveled to Las Vegas specifically for this purpose. Sanford's actions were motivated by a perceived duty to prevent Trump from becoming president. On July 13, 2024, presidential candidate and former President Donald Trump was at a campaign rally when he was struck on the ear by a gunshot fired by Thomas Matthew Crooks, a 20-year-old from Pennsylvania. One civilian was killed and 2 others were critically injured. The shooter was swiftly neutralized by a Secret Service agent. This was the first time in over 40 years that a presidential candidate and former president was injured in such an incident. The event underscored the continued risks faced by high-profile political figures. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more interesting videos. Thanks for watching. Until next time, remain curious.